My name is Elena Vasquez. I'm 34, and I've spent the last 9 years capturing other people's happiest moments through a lens, while my own wedding day remains the worst day of my life. 3 weeks ago, I was editing footage from a ceremony at the Botanical Gardens when my phone rang with a number I hadn't seen in nearly a decade. My mother's voice came through the speaker, cracked and small. Nothing like the woman who'd stood in the back of a church 9 years earlier and said 5 words, loud enough for everyone to hear. You are dead to me. Vera Petrov had a way of smiling that made you feel like you were being erased. She didn't cry at my wedding. She didn't shout. She just walked out during the vows with her chin up and her shoulders back. And by the time I turned around in my dress, the pew where my family should have been sitting was completely empty. 9 years of silence packed into that empty space. On the phone 3 weeks ago, I didn't flinch. I just held the receiver, calm as a stopped frame, and asked her one simple question. What do you see when you look at this picture? 12 hours later, she showed up at my studio door with a suitcase, mascara streaked down her face, and a stack of hospital bills she couldn't pay, and the one person she'd spent 9 years saying would never amount to anything was about to become the only person she had left. Welcome back to Revenge Camera Stories, where quiet people with steady hands capture the truth, and the lens never lies. If you've ever been erased by the people who were supposed to love you, settle in. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, and be sure to subscribe. Let me back up 12 hours, because the tears came before the suitcase did. It was a Sunday in April, the kind of spring morning where the light comes in golden. And I was standing at the back of St. Catherine's in my grandmother's lace, holding my father's Leica M6, the camera he'd taught me to shoot on when I was 7 years old. I'd asked my cousin to take photos, but I wanted one shot for myself, one frame of the moment before everything changed. I married Daniel Mora that day, a carpenter's son from the South Side, a man who spoke Spanish before English and built things with his hands that lasted. He had kind eyes and a steady heartbeat, and he'd loved me since we were 16. My mother hated him, not because he wasn't good, because he wasn't hers to approve. Vera Petrov came from old Russian stock, the kind of family that framed degrees and spoke 3 languages and measured worth in letters after your name. My father, God rest him, had been a photographer, an artist, a man who saw the world in apertures and shadows. She tolerated him because he'd been published, because his work hung in small galleries, because he'd had just enough, a claim to justify her explaining him at dinner parties. But Daniel made tables. He restored old wood. He smelled like sawdust and varnish. And he'd proposed to me with a ring he'd saved 2 years to buy, the week before the wedding. My mother came to my apartment and sat at my kitchen table with her hands folded like she was chairing a committee. If you marry him, she said, her accent sharpening the edges of every consonant, you are choosing a life I cannot be part of. You are choosing to be ordinary. I remember looking at her and thinking how small the word ordinary sounded in her mouth, like it was a diagnosis. I love him, Mama. She stood up, smoothed her skirt, and said the thing she'd been preparing to say. Then you are no longer my daughter. She said it so cleanly. No hesitation, like she'd been practicing. I thought she'd come to the wedding anyway. I thought she'd sit in that pew and decide, when it mattered, that I mattered more than her pride. I was wrong. I turned around during the vows to see if she was crying, if her face had softened, and the entire row was empty. My mother, my brother Alexei, my Aunt Irina gone. Daniel squeezed my hand, and the priest kept going. And I said I do with my voice steady because I'd learned from my father that you don't let the shake show. Not when the shot matters. But inside, something cracked. After the ceremony, my cousin Lena pulled me aside near the fellowship hall. Her face was tight with the kind of anger you get on someone else's behalf. "She stood up right before you walked down the aisle," Lena whispered. She said, loud enough for the whole section to hear. "I will not watch my daughter ruin herself." Then she left. Alexei followed. Irina looked like she wanted to stay, but Vera gave her a look and, "Elena, I'm so sorry." I nodded. I didn't cry. Not then. I went back into that reception and danced with my husband and cut the cake and smiled for every photo. Because that's what you do when you've been taught your whole life that the frame matters more than the feeling. But that night, lying next to Daniel in a hotel room we couldn't really afford, I held my father's Leica in the dark and whispered the question he used to ask me when I was learning to see. "What do you see when you look at this picture?" What I saw was a girl who'd spent 25 years trying to be enough for a woman who decided she never would be. Comment erased if you've ever been cut off by family. And keep watching because 9 years is a long time to be dead to someone. Here's what you should know about me before the rest makes sense. I grew up in a third-floor walk-up in Brooklyn, where my father ran a darkroom out of a converted closet. The smell of fixer and stop bath was the smell of home. He'd print through the night sometimes, and I'd wake up to rows of images hanging on a line like laundry. Still wet, still becoming. My mother cleaned houses when they first came to America, though she never told anyone outside the family. By the time I was in school, she managed a medical office and spoke English with the kind of precision that made people assume she'd been born here. She erased her own rough edges so thoroughly I sometimes forgot they'd existed. My father died of a heart attack when I was 19. Sudden, final, no warning. He left me to things. His Leica M6 and a refusal to be ashamed of work done with your hands. I went to community college. I studied visual arts. I shot weddings on weekends to pay for classes. And somewhere in there, I realized I was good not at posing people, but at catching the moments they didn't know they were having. The glance between a mother and daughter before the ceremony. The father's hand shaking as he fastened a cufflink. The truth under the performance. After my own wedding. After my mother left me standing at that altar, I made a decision. I would build a life she'd never be part of. Not out of spite. Spite is loud and hungry and exhausting. This was quieter. This was just at removal. I didn't call. I didn't send photos. I didn't show up to the Russian Orthodox Christmas services, where I knew she'd be holding court. And she didn't call me, either. 9 years, and the silence was mutual. Daniel and I moved into a small place in Astoria. He built our furniture. I shot weddings, graduations, family portraits, anything that paid. Slowly, carefully, I built a name. Not a famous one, but a trusted one. People hired me because I didn't just show up with a camera. I listened. I saw them. By year 3, I was booking 50 weddings a year. By year 5, I'd opened a studio. By year 7, I had a wait list. I didn't do it to prove anything to her. But I won't lie, there was a small, sharp part of me that hoped she'd hear. That someone at church would mention Elena Mora's photography. And she'd realize the daughter she'd thrown away had built something beautiful without her. I don't know if she ever did. What I know is this: I learned to live without her. And that's a different thing than getting over it. The space she left didn't fill. It just became part of the architecture. Daniel never pushed me to reconcile. He'd lost his own mother young. And he understood that some doors, once closed, don't open just because you want them to. She made a choice, he'd say, in that steady way of his. You're allowed to make one too. So I did. I kept my father's camera on a shelf in the studio, behind glass. The one piece of equipment I never used for work. It was just for me. A reminder that the best thing anyone ever taught me came from a man who saw the world in light and shadow, not in status and shame. And for 9 years, That was enough. The phone rang on a Tuesday. I just finished editing a wedding from the weekend before a beautiful ceremony at the Brooklyn Botanic Garden. Cherry blossoms everywhere, the kind of light you dream about as a photographer. I was color grading a shot of the bride's mother fastening her necklace. This tiny moment of such tenderness, it made my chest ache. When my phone buzzed on the desk, the number had a 718 area code. Local, but not saved. I almost didn't answer. Then something made me pick up. Elena. I knew the voice immediately. You don't forget the sound of the person who made you. 9 years, and she said my name like no time had passed at all. Like she still had the right to it. I didn't say anything. I just waited, the way I wait for a subject to settle into a frame. Elena, it's your mother. I know. A pause. I could hear her breathing, uneven, like she'd been crying or was about to. I need to speak with you. In person. Why? The word came out flat. Not cruel. Just factual. Because things have changed. Things changed 9 years ago, Mama. You didn't seem to need me then. I heard her breath catch. For a moment, I thought she'd hang up. Then her voice came back, smaller. Please, I know I have no right. But I am asking. There's a thing that happens when you've been hurt by someone for so long that you've built a life without them when they come back. Even their pain feels like a trap. Like if you let them in even an inch, the door will swing wide and you'll be right back where you started, trying to be enough. I looked at the screen on my desktop. The bride's mother, her hand so gentle on her daughter's neck. The love in that frame so uncomplicated. I thought about my own wedding day. The empty pew. What do you see when you look at this picture? I asked her. What? It's something Papa used to say. What do you see when you look at this picture, Mama? What do you see when you look at the last 9 years? Silence. Then, quietly, I see that I was wrong. I wasn't ready for that. I'd imagined this conversation 1,000 times. In some versions, I yelled. In some, I was cold. In some, I hung up. But in none of them did she actually say the words. Where are you? I asked. At a hotel. Near the studio. I looked you up. Of course she had. I'll meet you tomorrow. 1 hour, my studio. Then you leave. Thank you, Elena. Thank you. I hung up before she could say anything else. Daniel came home an hour later and found me sitting in the dark. My father's Leica in my hands. She called. I said. He didn't ask who. He just sat down next to me and waited. She wants to see me. What do you want? That was the question, wasn't it? I wanted to know why. I wanted to hear her say she was sorry. I wanted to stop carrying the weight of being dead to her. But more than any of that, I wanted to look her in the eye and show her that I was fine. That I'd built a life. That she hadn't broken me. I want to see what she sees now, I said. Daniel kissed the top of my head. Then let's find out. Comment closure if you know that feeling. When the person who hurt you comes back and you don't know if you want an apology. Or just proof you survived without them. She arrived at 2 p.m. the next day. Exactly on time. Because Vera Petrov was never late. I watched her from the window of my studio. A converted loft space in Long Island City. With vaulted ceilings and walls covered in framed portraits. My work, my name on the door. She stood on the sidewalk for a long moment, looking up at the sign. Elena Mora Photography. Not Petrov, Mora. I wondered if that hurt her. When she finally came in, I barely recognized her. Vera had always been a woman who controlled her image hair perfect. Posture straight, clothes pressed. The kind of woman who looked like she was about to be. Photographed even at the grocery store. The woman who walked into my studio. Looked 20 years older than the last time. I'd seen her. Her hair, once meticulously dyed dark brown, was streaked with gray and pulled into a messy bun. She wore a plain coat, no jewelry, and her face looked hollow. The sharpness I remembered had been worn down to something softer and sadder. She stopped in the middle of the studio, taking it in. The portraits on the walls. The equipment. The light pouring in from the industrial windows. "You did this," she said quietly. Not a question. "Yes. It's beautiful." I didn't say thank you. I didn't say anything. I just watched her the way I watch subjects in a frame looking for the truth under the surface. She turned to face me, and I saw it then. Her eyes were red. She'd been crying recently, maybe that morning. "Why are you here, Mama?" She flinched at the name, like she hadn't earned it. "I need your help." Of course, not "I missed you." Not "I'm sorry." Just "I need." With what? She reached into her bag and pulled out a stack of papers. Medical bills. Hospital letterhead. I saw the name of a cardiologist. An oncologist. Numbers with too many zeros. "I'm sick," she said. "My heart." And they found something else. In my lung. I felt my stomach drop, but I kept my face still. "I'm sorry to hear that." She looked at me like she was trying to find the daughter she remembered. The one who would have rushed to her side. "I don't have insurance anymore. I lost my job 2 years ago. I've been managing, but the bills, Elena, I can't pay them." "What about Alexei?" Her face did something complicated. "Alexei is in Seattle. He has his own family. His wife. She doesn't want me there." I almost laughed. The golden child, the son who'd followed her out of my wedding, didn't want her either. And Aunt Irina, she passed. Last year. I hadn't known. No one had told me, because no one in that family spoke to me. A small, petty part of me was glad I hadn't gone to the funeral. Glad I hadn't spent 9 years waiting by a phone that never rang. Only to show up and play the dutiful niece. "So you come to me," I said quietly. "The daughter you erased. Because now you need something." Yes, she said it plainly, and I almost respected her for it. "Yes, I come to you because I have no one else. You had me 9 years ago, Mama. You chose not to." Her hands twisted the papers, crinkling them. "I know. Do you?" I stepped closer. "Do you know what it felt like to turn around on my wedding day and see an empty pew? To spend 9 years wondering if you ever thought about me, if you ever regretted it. Every day." Her voice cracked. "Every single day, Elena." "Then why didn't you call?" "Because I was proud." It came out sharp, almost angry, and then her shoulders sagged. "Because I was so proud, and I told everyone you were. I told them you'd made your choice. And the longer I waited, the harder it was to take it back. I thought you'd come back. I thought you'd call and apologize and apologize." I felt the heat rise in my chest. For what? For marrying a good man. For choosing my own life. For not listening to me. She said it like it was obvious. "I'm your mother. I wanted better for you. You wanted control." She didn't deny it. I walked to my desk and picked up my father's Leica, turning it over in my hands. Papa used to ask me a question when I was learning to shoot. He'd hold up a print and say, "What do you see when you look at this picture?" She watched me, confused. "I'm going to ask you the same thing. Mama, what do you see when you look at the last 9 years?" She opened her mouth, closed it. "I see." She swallowed. "I see that I lost you. That I threw you away because I thought I knew better. And I was wrong. And I see that you became everything Papa said you would. And I wasn't there to see it." Her voice broke on the last word, and the tears finally came. I watched her cry in my studio. This woman who'd spent my whole life teaching me that crying was weakness, that control was everything. And I felt at nothing. Not satisfaction. Not pity. Just a vast, quiet emptiness. I'll pay your bills, I said. Her head snapped up, hope flooding her face. But not because you're my mother. Because Papa would have wanted me to. Elena, I'll pay them. But that's all. You don't get to move in. You don't get Sunday dinners. You don't get to meet Daniel's family or see the life I built. You made me dead to you. I'm letting you stay buried. She stood there, tears streaming, and nodded. I understand. Do you? Yes. I turned back to my computer, dismissing her the way she dismissed me. Leave the bills. I'll handle it. She set them on my desk with shaking hands. And then she just stood there, like she was waiting for something more.